My name is Natalie Quinn Wenderoth, and this is Not Your Normal Nonprofits. Nonprofit managing is challenging and unique in itself. However, these challenges become even more evident when you're managing a nonprofit in rural areas. This is an attempt to discover the most difficult issues a manager of a rural nonprofit faces in their day-to-day business that would differ from their rural counterpart. We will focus on rural areas and challenges that they might have with funding, leadership, service areas, and limitations. Funding in a rural setting poses differences for a rural area versus a urban area. The majority of funding comes from grants, donations, in-kind, and fundraising. The problem is with rural areas, they have to try and compete against grants that urban areas compete with as well. And then fundraising becomes something a little bit more challenging as well when the people have to try and continually ask the few community members that are there for donations repeatedly year after year and competing with other area businesses and students. Donations are a lot more scarce in rural areas, and in-kind donations tend to be less as well, especially when you're looking at donations for domestic violence centers versus donations for FFA or rescue ranches. Leadership is another area where rural nonprofits see a lot of challenges, whether they're trying to hire skilled staff that would be able to fulfill the job requirements or retain those employees. Sometimes there are fewer opportunities and they're not able to move up in the company as much, or they're not able to continue on in that profession. The next part would be budgets within the leadership. Rural versus urban. In the rural area, we see lower hourly wages for workers, as well as lower salaries for executives and nonprofits. So leaders in urban areas tend to make a large sum of money, where rural are making about half that. And so that's another challenge that they're facing with leadership, trying to attract the right kind of talent and retain that talent. The next area is the service areas. It sounds kind of odd, but sometimes a rural area could be serving fewer people, but they tend to be more spread out. So a urban nonprofit could be serving thousands of people that might live in a few blocks of each other or in a smaller community, where with a rural setting they could be serving 44,000 people in a in the size of Rhode Island area, where they're trying to service multiple people. The challenge that comes with the service areas are the amount of time it takes to drive from one location to another, the service area, trying to reach people that might be in their community but live 2 hours away, or a problem with public transportation, as there might not be any transportation to help them get to that nonprofit to use those resources. Limitations. Due to populations, urban nonprofits may have an advantage over rural areas in terms of being able to fundraise, having skilled leadership, and being able to provide more services in a smaller area. This will seek to determine whether these are correct and true, or whether it doesn't matter if you're a rural nonprofit or an urban. The challenges are both similar. We may discover that it's a really small difference, or it may be a really large. Currently, the stance is that rural areas have it more challenging than rural areas for the reasons just mentioned, even though there may be more. To conclude, the goal is to understand the challenges that are unique to rural nonprofits, in addition to determine how the urban counterparts differ from the rural organizations, and hope to provide better information to people possibly wanting to go into a nonprofit in a rural setting, how to better serve the community, and some of the challenges that they may face along the way. Thank you.